such as, do Christians suffer from mental illness? Have you wondered why they act abnormal? Or you may ask, what is really going on in their minds? Do you need a net? Well, keep listening for a biblical understanding of the psychology of the mind.
All right, all right. Welcome to another session of Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette. And I am none other than your host, Annette Harris. Thank you so much for joining us on today, and thank you for listening. Before we go further, let me acknowledge the Lord in prayer. Lord, we thank you for this beautiful day that you've blessed us to see. We ask that you, a word of mouths, give us what to say, get the glory out of whatever we go to say and do. This is for your glory. We pray in Jesus' name. And our opening scripture, which is the first part of Hosea 4:6, it states, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee. And again, we are grateful. Today is Wednesday, October 4th, 2017. And Mind, Body, and Soul is back in session. And I'm excited because it's a little bit after 12, maybe about 12. Oh my goodness. 12:13 in the PM. We're here normally from 12 to 2 every Wednesday on Intellectual Radio. There are 3 different ways that you can listen to us on today. The station's website, IntellectualRadio.com. We're also on YouTube Live at the present time. And then I also have a Facebook Live feed going on my page, Annette, known as Annette. And I am excited that you are here with me on today. Before I get started, I want to simply actually kind of thank everyone. It seems like last week was so far away. I was speaking with actually my assistant earlier today, and we were talking about last week's show. I want to thank each and every one of you that joined me on last week and that gave me a birthday shout out. Those of you that called in, those of you that sung. There was a beautiful video presentation that was given, and I really felt loved. I really did. A huge shout out to my assistant, Demetria Brand Triplett. She is one of a kind. She's a jewel, and she spearheaded last week's show and getting things together, and I can't thank her enough. But as you come in on this week, what I want to do real quick is to thank our sponsors. You know, because of last week, I again was grateful for those of you who, actually supported Annette and Mind, Body, and Soul in celebrating my birthday. I wanted to say that in appreciation, what I want to do, those of you who are interested in sponsorship with Mind, Body, and Soul, I am going to actually give out and this is keeping with my birthday celebration, we're going to offer a limited free sponsorship for your business. A limited free sponsorship on Mind, Body, and Soul for your business. So if you're interested, you have a business, whether it's a small business, a big business, or ministry that you want to have advertised here on Mind, Body, and Soul, it's a weekly advertisement, and there are other detailed advertisements in there as well. But inbox me. Inbox me if you're interested. We will see if we can get this going for you. So again, this is, I said, in keeping with my birthday celebration, or just to recognize and appreciate all of you for your love on last week, I am going to actually offer a limited free sponsorship for your business. So inbox me. And speaking of sponsors, want to thank our sponsors that we have that are supporting Mind, Body, and Soul. Studio V Fashion and Consulting, Studio V Image Fashion and Consulting. The proprietor is Felicia A. Williams. Please look her up on Facebook. And then also Anointed Minds Tutoring Services. And we also have another one joining us, Virtual Executive Assistant. Now, the owner for Anointed Mind Tutoring is Deanna Adams. And then the owner also for Virtual Executive Assistant is Demetria Brand Triplett. So what you can do to find out more information on our sponsors, we'll talk about them a little bit later, hop onto my page, Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette, and then also on my personal page, Annette, known as Annette. You can find their information there as well. So needed to do those housekeeping items before we got into today's topic. And I want to, I look around at, the events, of course, that are going on in the world. You can't help but to look, and see what's happening in our news. And I wanted to do a show today that would actually kind of encompass, what we have been witnessing and what we witnessed. I believe it was Sunday evening, this tragedy happened. But I kind of want to do like a general session. And I was entitling today's topic, The Psychological Aftermath of a Mass Tragedy. A lot of times we see these things happen, we're looking at in Vegas, how this, this tragedy happened. People were at a concert. People were out, doing what they do out, for entertainment. And then unfortunately, their night was basically ripped apart by an individual who, you know, he killed himself, so we don't know exactly why he did it. Of course, there are a lot of investigations going on and speculations, but he basically ruined many lives, those who are no longer with us, and then the victims' families that are still here dealing with this tragedy. And of course, in keeping with Mind, Body, and Soul and what we do here, we want to look at this, from a psychological standpoint. And I thought about, as I'm looking at, the aftermath, as I'm looking at video and, news clips and news video of how people were running all over the place and, trying to get away. Others were helping others. I thought about, after it's over, now what? Where do we go from here? How do we help individuals to deal with this, those that were there, that saw things firsthand, those, family members that, is they won't have their loved ones anymore. Was it maybe like 50 plus people that were actually killed and over 500 that were injured? Now, you may hear a voice now, and I must stop to introduce on the phone. Dr. Joyce Graham is with us on this afternoon. And again, many of you probably will remember Dr. Joyce. She's come on. She's a therapist, and she's come on before, counselor in her own right. And I've asked her to come on and join us with the time that she has on today to try and help us make sense of this. And Dr. Joyce, I know I messaged you, as a matter of fact, to ask you, about your participation after I put up my post. Now, how are you feeling? We're not going to, like rehash and tell the account of exactly what happened, because everybody knows. Everybody knows with this past event what exactly happened. But I wanted to talk to you, and maybe you can help talk to my listeners, and we can look at this from a psychological standpoint. What were your initial thoughts when I messaged you and what we were trying to do on today?
Well, like everyone else, of course, I am just in, oh gosh, my heart just is broken when I heard about the tragic events in Las Vegas. And when you first contacted me regarding your broadcast on today, I was really glad to have an opportunity to maybe lend an ear for those of us who, include myself, are just trying to wrap our minds around yet another mass traumatic event.
Mm-hmm. Right, yeah. And it's something, because it almost seems like, I think someone said, it seems like it's happening. It has happened so much, just even within this year, alone. But then, we go back. I was listening actually to Walter Jones, Sir Walter Jones. He did a live feed regarding this particular event, and he kind of, gave off a lot of statistics, which, which is good for us to know. But it was mind blowing, because when you think back on, oh my gosh, all these things did happen, and it has changed and altered so many lives.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at it, it's not something that you can easily just say, okay, I'm just gonna, turn my head away from it, or I'm not gonna look at the news anymore, or what have you. It's still something you have to deal with And even though it did not happen, maybe here in Illinois, that doesn't mean it doesn't affect us, mentally, psychologically, or whatever. We may have family there, or individuals. And I saw individuals, some that were marking themselves as safe, on Facebook, when the tragedy happened. But it's definitely something to deal with, because it's not easy. It's definitely not easy. And I kind of want to talk. So how about we do it like this? If someone was to come into your practice, that was dealing with this, and I know you were saying it affected you as well, but was dealing with, a situation, as this, or maybe they came from Vegas to where you are, and they happened to come into your practice, and they were telling you about, their experience even being there on that Sunday, and seeing all of this happen. Kind of, how would you, how do you think that you would deal with something like this, as a counselor, as a therapist?
Well, if it was someone who was directly involved in the tragedy, in terms of maybe being there personally, and maybe observing, people being taken down, the first thing that I would do is, of course, try to assess how it was affecting them personally. In other words, I would allow them time to talk about it from their own perspective. I think a lot of times that counselors, me included, we are just so compassionate, and we're just ready to help and to assist. And a lot of times we may not give people time to share from their own perspective. And so that's the first thing that I would do. I would just allow them to share from their own perspective. And then I would explore, depending on what they told me, whatever they shared, I would just explore and try to guide them to some sense of, I would try to normalize, I guess is a better word for it. Because when someone goes through something like this, it's very traumatic. There's shock, there's fear, there's anger, there's grief, there's problems concentrating, and all other kind of symptoms going on all at the same time. And then, Annette, the other thing I want to mention is that, all of those reactions that I just named, they're common responses to traumatic events, and they usually pass over time. But I think now, since there's been so many things happening in rapid succession, the earthquakes, the hurricanes,
yes,
terrorist attacks, and now this mass shooting, usually there is time to recover, but seemingly we aren't getting a chance to recover. And so...
you mean because it's back-to-back things happening?
Yes, back-to-back, absolutely.
Yeah, that's something, and it's almost like, I mean, you said it. You really don't have time to recover, and then your mind is in so many different places. Like you say, you go through the different stages, even the stages of grief, and it's not. I guess I really want to be able to let the people know that there are counselors out there, there are therapists out there that will listen. And I'm so glad you said what you said when I asked you if someone was to come into your office, about how you would allow them to express themselves.
Right.
Because I think people at this point need to know that there's someone there to listen. There's someone there, that I can really vent to. And then we can try and find, and you also talked about normalization, trying to make it normal for them, as much as possible. I know people probably say, how can you make this normal? But, normal in a sense of where they can be able to I guess you can say accept, things, that have happened, and then how to move forward.
Absolutely. You hit it right on the head, how to move forward, because that's going to be different for everybody. That's going to be something that is unique. But the best thing that a mental health professional can do, and what I would do, is just offer tools to help that person move forward. And what I would do, Annette, is I would try and go back in their history and just try to identify, how did they move forward from 9/11? How did they move forward from the death of Dr. Martin Luther King? And most importantly, how did they move forward when they faced their own personal tragedy?
Right, right. And it's that last point is key. That's key to me. I was just talking with someone the other day, and I asked them, I said, when you see, whether it's a tragedy, a mass tragedy like this, or a situation, I said, how do you deal with it, or how do you look at it? Do you try to put yourself in that person's situation and then try and think in your mind how you would deal with it? And the person said, yeah. See, I tend to do that all the time. I tend to put myself in, individuals' shoes, should I say, and see, okay, I guess I'm trying to understand how they're feeling, number one. And then, God forbid, if that was to happen to me, what would I do? But yeah, and it is key to, see how people would handle it going forward. I'm looking here on Facebook Live. I do see a lot of people that have joined in, and I do appreciate you all for listening on today. I want to let you know that if you have any comments or questions, even regarding this, please make sure to go ahead and put them in the comments section. You can also call in here at 708-223-8953. We do have Dr. Joyce on the line, but we can answer the other line as well. But if you have questions for Dr. Joyce and or myself, we can try to address them on today. Because again, I think as a whole, we can't just say, oh, that's just Vegas' situation, or that's just, and I can't remember, please help me, where Sandy Hook was. What city was that in? City and state? The Sandy Hook tragedy with the children. Right. So we can't, wherever the situations are happening, we can't just say, oh, it's over there. It's not affecting me, because it does. I mean, and even how, we can look, around the world, and like you even mentioned about the hurricanes and the earthquakes and different things like that. Those are mass tragedies, as well. And it's not, something that we can just easily blow off, or we really shouldn't, should I say. We have to look at, situations, and, I'm even, you have all these different speculations that have come across. They say that, the gunman in the Vegas tragedy, that some say he was working alone. Then they say he wasn't working alone. It's just so much going on. They say that he did have psychological issues, and then some say he didn't, but regardless of what it was, or what the reasoning was, we still have to deal with this in the here and now, because it has occurred, regardless of whether we ever know what the real reason was. It has happened. And now what do we do now? Right. Where do we go from here?
Right. And you were talking about the reasoning behind it. And of course, we don't know right now. But I think on today, I watched an interview. They were interviewing that individual who did the shooting. They were interviewing his brother, and his brother was saying that he really hoped when they did the autopsy that they found a brain tumor or something that would help explain why his brother did what he did. And I was thinking, as a counselor and as a professional, I think a lot of times that when something like this happens, we do tend to try and evaluate it psychologically. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that we also have to remember is that we can't fail to include the heart of a person, the condition of the heart. Maybe, psychologically he might have been sound, and I'm thinking too, how could a person be sound to kill on at this level or kill at all, And so I'm just thinking. I was just thinking today about the condition of the heart. It's not always the head. Sometimes it is the evil in men's hearts.
Right. Definitely. Definitely. And now, you do have individuals who, excuse me, you do have individuals who, when you start talking about, on the flip side, when you start talking about psychological issues, they're like, well, why do you always have to just limit it to that? Or there's also talk that only certain races are labeled with psychological issues. So if it was a different race, then it would be a different reason.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and it's like you're dealing with, even as a counselor, as a therapist, I'm sure you're dealing with all of that as well, and how to address, when people come up with it. Because, I always say this is my mantra. If the mind does not know the answer to a question or a situation, it's going to create the answer. And that's just normal. That's what a normal human being or human mind would do. It's just going to create the answer, if it doesn't know. So that's where all the speculations come from. And, maybe he did it because of this, or maybe it was because of that, because we really don't know the exact answer. He's gone now, so we don't know. We can't talk to him directly and see, whether or not he would tell us the truth or not. But still, we can't talk to him. So we're creating all these, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And so that's what tends to happen. But it's like, of course, we have to be so careful in our speculation and trying to figure out what was the real cause.
Most definitely, because there are crimes of what they call crimes of passion, where people just snap all of a sudden. And then there are crimes of premeditation, where people amass, as this individual did, amassed, I don't know how many rifles and guns and ammunition he had. So again, like you said, we speculate. So I'm just speculating that it was premeditated, and we try to make sense of our world. It's just as you said, we're trying to make sense of this thing, and in reality, we may not ever know, like you said. Right.
We may not ever know. You're right. And, because I've heard so many things just over in the past few days, of what it could have been. Now, let me see here on Facebook. I see Beatrice. When we were talking about putting ourselves in other situations to understand, she says she does the same thing. That's what empathetic people or empaths do. That's true. That's true, Beatrice. Brandy here says no recovery time, only exacerbates the trauma. I would agree. No time to heal or even process. And, so what do you do in that situation, Dr. Joyce? How do you tell? I mean, because it's nothing that we can control. We can't control hurricanes. We can't control, the tragedies with the hurricanes and the earthquakes and all of that. And then this happens. So how would you address an individual who's saying, okay, I don't have time to recoup. I can't. And then it's like they're just going, further and further. It's affecting them further and further psychologically. What would you say to them?
Well, there's several things that we can do. One of the things that we have to practice, because as your listener said, some of these things are happening in rapid succession. And there is no time to regroup, and there is no time to recover. One of the things that we have to practice nowadays, we absolutely have to put this into practice, and it's called radical acceptance. And that is that we all must acknowledge that the world isn't completely safe, and we don't have complete control over what happens to us. Some things are totally out of our realm of control. Even natural disasters, which are not deliberately done by humans, still is out of our control. They are acts of God. When something like this happens, where there's a tragedy that is deliberate, done to us, we still don't have control to a great degree. And I like to talk about some of the things that we could do as our government could be doing. But we have to make a decision. And it is a decision. It has to be a deliberate decision. It has to be a cognitive decision that we must come to terms with. And that is that we're not going to let this derail us. We're not going to let this disrupt our lives, but we are going to survive, and we are going to go on, just as we did with 9/11, just as we did with some of the other tragedies. And I don't mean to be insensitive, because, some people, as you said, have lost their daughters, their moms, their husbands, and I haven't heard of any children being affected. But if a child has lost his mom, then yeah, they're affected too, even if they did not suffer the loss of their lives. And so what encouraged me, Annette, was seeing all of those people lined up donating blood. There were just hundreds of people. And I think that's one of the ways that we can return to normalcy, is by seeing what is it that we can do to help pull us out of the situation. Can we donate money? Can we send aid? What can we do? And those people donated blood to the victims of that tragedy. So
beautiful.
Yeah, that's a story.
Yeah, I like that. I like what you said there. And I guess in a sense, or maybe to sum up what you were just saying, maybe kind of, I don't want to say, well, I guess I can kind of lightly say get out of ourselves and maybe kind of think about others. Maybe
Right.
that can help us to, deal with this, when you think about, and I know Beatrice had mentioned when you're empathetic toward individuals, then I think a lot of times you can kind of reach out. And you may be hurting yourself. You may be. But maybe that is an avenue to help you to kind of get through, what it is you're dealing with. And now remember this question for me. I want to also deal with it because you kind of touched on the children.
Oh, yeah.
When children see, situations like this, whether they are actually there, where it happened or across the world, and they see it on the news, how do parents explain to their children, because whether we realize it or not, a humongous fear comes over us.
Yes.
When you look at it, you're like, oh my God, Now, of course, those of us who are in Christ and trust in God, we do trust in him, but that doesn't negate, how we may feel. We know how we should and could react, with having Christ in our lives and trusting him to help us to deal with it. But then we have to realize that there are individuals who will look at a situation like what happened in Vegas, and they will say, I'm not going to another concert. I'm not going to another public event. I'm not going out, because who knows what may happen. I've seen that down the timeline of Facebook. Some individuals have said, you can't go anywhere. You can't do this. You can't do that because of what may possibly happen. Now, I want to address those two things. How do we deal with our children in that respect? And then how do we also deal with, individuals who may even be feeling that way, who, may feel, I'm just not going anywhere. And then they're just going to stay in the house and be, a recluse or whatever.
Yeah.
But that.
So do you want me to deal with the children first?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Okay. Children are so vulnerable and so fragile. And we teach our children to assume that the world is safe and that, to a great extent that the world is predictable. And so when traumas like this happen, even though they may not be directly involved in it and they are not victimized by it in the sense that they were there, but when they hear of things like this, it shatters all of those assumptions, that the world is safe, that it's predictable, that everything is going to be all right. So what a child basically wants to know, Annette, is that they are still safe.
Yes. And will it happen here?
And will it happen here? Absolutely. And so what we as caregivers, parents, aunts, uncles, whoever we are in that child's life, what we have to remember is that we have to be aware, first of all, of the child's age. Because the age of the child should drive the direction of the conversation. And what I mean by that is that children at different ages process things differently. Tragedy affects them differently because of the level of their understanding and their perception. For example, with preschool children, they aren't going to really understand all of the details. And so it's not necessary to go into a lot of details. What I would do with a preschool child would be to find out, first of all, what do they already know? What have they already heard? And then I would go from there. Let them ask their questions and address the questions that they ask, but make sure that we make them feel safe. Children that age, they're reassured by hugs and, cuddling and, that type of thing. However, with elementary children and maybe middle-aged school children, because, I think that at this age, they're very creative. So children this age might have more questions because they're going to, really, really, if you try to assure them that they're safe, they're going to say, really, So what we need to do at that age is try and help them separate fantasy from reality because they are very creative. And so we might have to really give them some hard facts to help them, process what has happened. Then with your high school children, I know that I have a granddaughter who I'm raising, Megan. She's in high school. And what she told me the other day was really profound. She said something to the effect of that we older people need to turn the world and the government and all of it over to the millennials because they are the ones that are going to have to live in the reality and the problems that we're creating now. So turn the world over to them now. But all the children tend to want more information. They want to know more information. They also want to learn. They want to know about the recovery efforts as well, too. So they're going to have strong opinions, like Megan did, about why it happened, what they think caused it, how it can be prevented in the future, and then sometimes they also want to know what it is that they can do to help.
Right. And then because they want to feel a part of the solution.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And they don't want to feel like they're being dismissed or their thoughts are being dismissed. So that was a good point she made. Very good point. Mm-hmm. Now, right. Although to me, I think it's turning over to them anyway. We do say they're our future, but those are very good points. I'm glad she even shared that with you. I'm looking on here on Facebook, and actually my goddaughter LaShonda, she has a few young children, her and her husband. She said, valid points. As a mother with young children, having these honest conversations are so important. She said, it's hard to not want to just, oh, wait, maybe we missed something in there. Not just go anyway, because times are crazy. So I guess maybe, in other words, addressing it is more important than not addressing it, is what it seems like she's saying.
Absolutely.
Here. Because,
she's right.
Because the times are different now. And it's like you said about the, succession of the events. I mean, things are just happening. Back to back. And I love that point you made earlier when I asked you, what do you do? What would you
Mm-hmm.
say to individuals? You talked about radical acceptance, with,
Right.
with the back-to-back situations that are
Right.
happening. Radical
Right.
acceptance, that term is profound in and of itself
Mm.
because of
Yeah.
the day and time we live in now and what we're being faced with. So,
Mm-hmm.
and this is not saying that, of course, that our trust is not in God, but we have to look at what we're dealing with here, the reality of what's hitting us.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we do pray, and ask God
Mm-hmm.
for his guidance and direction, but we need to know what we're praying for. So we must look and
Mm-hmm.
see, the times that
Right.
we are facing and
Right.
what it
Right.
is that we are actually dealing with.
Right. And I like what you said in that when you said that we aren't exempt because we live in a fallen world. We live in a fallen world, and so we are susceptible to anything else that the world goes through, and uh, we have hope in Christ, and we know that eventually and inevitably we're going to be rescued from this world. But right now we have to live down here. So we have to cope and we have to learn to adjust and adapt to what's going on, as well as, non-believers, I'll put it like that.
Yes.
People, don't have faith in God.
Right. I mean, we're living here in this present world, so we have to deal with this stuff that
Right.
is facing
Right.
us.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I just want to add something else about the children, unless you had a question from your feed there.
No, you can go ahead and add about the children.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure that those of us who are exposed to children, because children take their cues from us, and we have to make sure that it's okay to let them see that we're concerned, but we have to be careful that we're not overreacting, because they do take their cues from us and they're watching us and they're looking at how mommy is responding, how daddy is responding to this. And so one of the things that we must do is limit their exposure to media. When they continually and repeatedly see and hear coverage about the tragedy, and then there are some really graphic images on television, on social media that disturb me. So I know if a child sees that, it's going to be very, very disturbing. So I would also suggest to parents that if their child is having a particularly difficult time processing these tragedies, take advantage, if there are counselors at school, take advantage of the counseling that the schools offer.
Yes. Good. That's good. I love that. Because and I was thinking too, yes, they do offer the counselors, and I'm glad you said for them to take advantage of it, because they have them out there, whether it is a national tragedy or if it's something that happened locally. I was just listening on the news earlier today about a young 16-year-old, I think he was, young man that was just killed, I believe last night, high schooler. And here, I believe it's in Illinois, but he was on his way back from some event with some other students, I believe, and there was a head-on collision. So then you think about the children that are going, to the high school that he went to. They have to go to school today, so I'm sure they're going to have counselors, on hand for them, as well, because this is something that you weren't expecting. Of course, kids always think they're invincible anyway, and that nothing's going to happen to them.
They do feel that.
Yeah, they do. And, so, yeah, they have them available, and, parents can take advantage of that if they want. Now, I just saw on here, I'm going to read this comment and maybe a couple of others, and then I'm going to go to a quick break. Let's see, Nicola Jones, she put on here, we must put fear out of our lives. She said, the just shall live by faith. So I think even in keeping with, instructing our children, we as Christians, we as saints of God, yes, definitely have to put in, our faith. We must mix that in, and when you're talking to your children, I would encourage you doing that, and because you don't want, and this is going to get into that second question, you don't want individuals to get to a point where they don't want to go out anywhere, because that can
Right.
easily happen. There's a very fine line there that can easily happen, you know, in individuals' minds. They may think, oh, well, you know, to resolve that, I'm just not going to go. You know, some people may have bought tickets to a concert that's coming up or an event that's coming up, and they may say, oh, no, I'm not going now. You know, you can look and see. There was a situation, I believe, I think it was when in Colorado, that shooting in the movie theater.
Oh, yeah.
I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, you know, if I was at the theater, you know, that could easily happen. You know, in your mind, you're thinking that, you know, you're just going out for a nice evening, going out to, you know, see a movie or something. You don't think about anything like that. Now, I will say after that, you know, you get to thinking, there I go putting myself in a situation again. I was at the theater and I'm looking around, you know, you being real conscious and aware of your surroundings and who's there to look at the movie as well. You're like, okay, that one kind of look a little suspicious. Let me stay away. Go ahead.
I think you really clarified that. You know, it's not all the time that we are governed by fear.
Right.
Is that our sense of our surroundings has been heightened, and we have to be aware of our surroundings. My husband and I went to breakfast this morning, and I found myself trying to identify an escape route just in case I needed to get out of there in a hurry. And I had to do some self-talking to myself and say, stop, enjoy the moment. Enjoy the moment.
Good.
You know, so we can't let fear rule our lives, but on the other hand, we still have to be aware of our surroundings. Who's coming in? Who has something that looks like a gun case? We must be wise. The Bible tells us that we must be wise. Wise as serpents, harmless as doves, but we must pray, but we must watch also.
Yes, definitely. You know, when I was coming along, you know, when you're coming along when you're young, you would think certain things were in the Bible. I found out later this wasn't in the Bible, but my daddy would always say, watch as well as pray. Watch, you know. I mean, you know, consecutively like that.
Right.
That was his favorite, you know, phrase. That was his mantra. You know, and I'm like, okay, all right, you're right, Dad. And you know, my grandmother used to always say you have to know your children. I think my dad knew me. You need to be conscious and be aware of your surroundings and who's around you.
Absolutely.
So he instilled that in me by constantly telling me that all the time. Let me see here on Facebook Live. Deidre says, it's very stressful in this day and time. In days past, before radio, TV, and especially the internet, people about everything that was happening all over the world, just as it was happening. Okay, you're right. Before all this came about. Now we get every bit of bad news immediately. Tragedy affects us 24/7. That's true. And I think because it's so visible and it's in the public eye, you know, sometimes that in itself would bring on that fear as well.
Right. And she's talking about overexposure, which is exactly what's happening. And that is why I kind of advocate turning off the news, taking a break from the news. I mean, it's like she said, we're being inundated and overexposed day after day with negative news, and it's unhealthy. So, you know, every now and then we take a break. You know, we make our children take a break, but we as adults need to take a break also.
Yes, definitely. And it's funny because this next comment from Deidre says, she says, sometimes I have to turn it all off and go into prayer. She says, not like an ostrich hiding my head in the sand, but as a personal defense mechanism. I like that.
Absolutely. I love that.
Very good point. Very good point. There are other comments on here, but let me ask my producer to take me to a quick break, and we'll come back and see what kind of time we have left with you, and then we'll move forward from there. You are listening to Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette right here on Intellectual Radio.
Lord is here. Oh, how refreshing. Can anybody feel him? The Lord is here. It's so refreshing. The Lord is here. Oh, how refreshing. Ooh. Times of refreshing. Times of refreshing. Times of refreshing. They come from the Lord. The Lord is here. Oh, how refreshing. I know somebody ought to be at your feelings. The Lord is here. It's so refreshing. The Lord is here. Oh, how refreshing. Ooh. He has my peace, and he has all of my joy. And times of refreshing, they come from the Lord. The Lord is here. Oh, how refreshing. Thank God for Jesus. The Lord is here right now. It's so refreshing. The Lord is here right now. Oh, how refreshing. Times of refreshing. Times of refreshing. Times of refreshing. Oh, they come. They come from the Lord. The Lord is here. Just reach out and touch him. Oh, how refreshing. Can anybody feel him in this room? The Lord is here.
All right. Welcome back to Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette. And I am your host, Annette Harris. We're here on Intellectual Radio, and I'm so glad that you have joined us on today. We're on the station's website, IntellectualRadio.com. We're also on YouTube Live, and I also have a Facebook Live feed going on my page, Annette, known as Annette. I'm so grateful that you have joined us on today. And on the phone, we do have Dr. Joyce Graham on the line with us, and she is extending to us information that will help us facilitate today's topic. We're talking about the psychological aftermath of a mass tragedy, and we're talking about it, of course, from a psychological standpoint. She is a LPC counselor therapist, and she is very experienced in this area and helping us to deal with situations that really are out of our control. And, anything from a natural disaster to situations that we just learned about in Vegas on this past weekend. So we've kind of been talking on our last point that we were discussing was talking about how to handle our children and how, once they see, these situations happen, because children, they are full of questions. And, we want to dispel fear as much as we can and to help people to, not only children, of course, but help people to adjust to what we are now facing. My second question to you was about individuals when they see tragedies like this and they get in their minds, okay, I don't want to go out to a public event. I don't want to be around crowds. I do see on here on the Facebook Live feed a comment from Michelle Thomas, and she says that is how she is now. She says she doesn't like going anywhere where there are large crowds. And seeing things like that, because you think, and I know that she and her husband, they go out and they do different events. They go to concerts. And I'm sure that that was probably a way of her placing herself into that situation and how she will react. But this is what she's come up with. She doesn't really want to go out around. So how do you handle these individuals who may have that sense of fear, that sense of, I don't want to be exposed to a possible situation like this, so I'll just stay put? I won't go out and enjoy myself, or in so many words, you're letting life pass you by. How would you handle it?
Sure. Individuals who, because all of us feel like that from at one point or another in our lives when something happens like that. And when we feel that way, our sense of safety has been taken away from us. So we feel that the safest place is in the home or in the house, and not to expose ourselves. And that way we won't be affected by anything. What happens is that the brain is traumatized, because it's not only the physical, the things that you go through physically when you've been exposed to trauma, but to some degree, your brain is affected to where, what happens when you are in, when you're exposed to either a tragedy or an impending tragedy. Maybe it looks like it's going to happen, or it's threatening, and it doesn't happen. Your body goes into a fight or flight stage where the adrenaline starts, rising, and your heart starts pumping real fast. Well, that's a normal reaction of the body, but then the brain is affected also. So what am I saying? I'm saying that there are some things that are happening in your conscious brain that is saying, danger, danger, don't go here, don't go there. What we have to do is we have to be intentional, and we have to, in a way, reprogram that part of our brains. And what I mean by that is that we almost have to, for lack of a better word, force ourselves.
Right.
Go out again. And and identify, because this is going to be different for everybody, but identify what it is that makes you feel safe. What place makes you feel safe? Okay? Identify that first, and then start going to that place, or start experiencing those activities or whatever that make you feel safe first. Because what we need to do is heal.
Yes.
We've been traumatized. That fight and flight has kicked in, and and so we're stressed. And so what we have to do is we have to start that healing process. The only thing that's going to start that brain to coming back to normal, to where we aren't, that fear isn't kicking in again, is that we have to expose ourselves, and we have to start with the places, the people, and the things that make us feel safe. And then from there, we just do a little bit more and a little bit more. Withdrawing and isolation is not the answer, because we have to go on with our lives despite what has happened in this world, what has happened to us personally. We have to go on. That's the first thing. That is the first part of the healing process, is getting up, putting one in front of the other. So isolation is not the answer. It'll work for a little while, but after a while, it's unhealthy, and it's just not going to make for your mental, or your emotional health. So you have to force yourself, and I'm using that term again, but it's what we have to do. And then also do some self-talk. Do some self-talk. Talk to yourself. Talk yourself out of being fearful. Just, create a conversation in your mind and do some self-talk. But we have to be intentional about it. I understand where she's coming from. I understand it perfectly, because there have been times where tragedy has struck, and I live in St. Louis. So, we've had our share where, in certain areas, I don't even want to drive, but I know that that's not the answer, and I know that I have to drive in those areas. But what I do is I take precaution. Certain times of the day or night, I don't drive in those areas. I'm using wisdom, but I'm not letting fear cause me to isolate myself stay in the bed and pull the cover over my head. I'm not going to live like that. We can't live like that. God is not intended for us to live. He doesn't want us to live that way. So I hope that helps.
That was good. That was really good. And you were saying my mind was talking with you as you were talking. Of course, you definitely have to use wisdom, in your areas. And what I surmised from what you were saying is that you take it, a step at a time, to get yourself back out there so that you won't become a recluse, or staying in or becoming a hermit and not going anywhere. Because I've even from 9/11 and, going back to what you said earlier about how did you come through that? How did you come, you have people to start thinking about the past tragedies that have affected, whether it was worldwide or something local. How did you come through that? There were individuals, from the 9/11 who to this day still do not want to fly.
Absolutely.
They have that fear. And I was just talking with someone the other day about that. And they were mentioning about, no, I just don't want to fly. I don't want to fly. And their spouse wanted to fly to take them on a vacation, but they wanted to drive. They wanted to drive to get there. But of course, the flying would get them there quicker. And so I literally had to talk to them on the telephone. I said, you're going to have to release that fear,
Absolutely.
Because it's not, what is it going to do for you? And I also knew that it would have been best for them to fly. And, I said, so, go ahead. I said, ask the Lord to help you, with that fear. And go enjoy the vacation with your husband.
Right. And, some people may have to take baby steps.
Right.
So everybody is not able to take a quantum leap. Some people just aren't there yet. And I understand that, you have to meet people where they are. But you can take baby steps. Just take small steps. And I know about the flight fear because I've struggled with that as well. But what I do is maybe I'll take a short flight, and then maybe the flight will take maybe an hour, and then I'll increase that. That's exactly what I did, as a matter of fact.
Good.
I short flight, and it took a longer. I had to build up. So I understand. I do.
Right. Well, thanks for that transparency, because a lot of times, people can relate when you've gone through it too. They can relate and understand and say, oh, okay, I can do that as well. But yeah, that's good, to take, like you said, the baby steps, or take just a little bit at a time to try and help, acclimate you and get you, back into, the swing of things. Let's see here on Facebook Live. Abby T says, we are spiritually connected, believers and non-believers, no matter the color of skin or gender. Joy or tragedy affects us all. This is a hard blow to us all, but by coming together and putting differences aside, we must uplift each other. Yes, we are flawed inside and out. We must start looking at our good and not focus on our differences and flaws. Bring your good to the forefront. And I'm glad she said that. I know this, we're kind of talking about something else. This is bring us into something else right now. I actually had shared a post on my timeline from Joe Hill, a Facebook friend, Joe Hill.
I saw it.
And I saw that you read it. There were others that read it, and it's a very lengthy post. It is lengthy, but Joe Hill is actually a resident of Las Vegas, Nevada. And so he actually put this post up as he wanted to give his account, so to speak. It was in his own words, the events that happened, but it was very profound what he said, because what I gathered from, and you all please go to my wall so that you can read this post, and it kind of ties into what Abby was saying as well. And also what you kind of said earlier, Dr. Joyce, about kind of, getting out of ourselves and coming together and helping others. Because he said what he learned from that tragedy of being there is, to refocus now and start, thinking, positive and everything. And that I think is good in a sense, because being there actually in the heart of it, I'm sure that probably wasn't easy for him to do and to say. He said he's cried, he's prayed for those he doesn't even know their names, never even knew them. Sure. But he was basically coming out of himself and not being selfish, in that he's in that in that area, and it affected him as well. But basically kind of like reaching out, and some of the points he was bringing out in his post, he talked about how different individuals. There was I believe it was a fiance that was killed because he was reaching out, helping others, and his fiance was somewhere waiting for him, but he ended up getting killed because he was reaching out, helping others. There were others. I want to see if I can flip back through here that he kind of related to, but he was basically saying they suffered, but he was putting himself in their shoes. He said, but that's me. And I said, then we go back to what we said earlier, putting yourself in individual shoes in their situation that they're dealing with, so that you can kind of understand, where they were coming from. He talked about, about a man, walking the strip crying, because he has to go home and let his 8-year-old daughter know that mommy is not coming home. She won't be home. He said, doesn't matter how he voted, that's me. There was a military vet, I understand, who was shot. He was celebrating his 29th birthday at the concert. But he said it doesn't matter if he stands for an anthem or not. He said he is me. And then we just talked about the fiance already. But he said here, these man-made labels that we impose on others, and I'm kind of reading briefly from his post, says those labels which won't exist in our eternal kingdom are violently ripped off and deemed irrelevant during times of tragedy and death. The walls we build to separate us are relegated to rubble by the souls of the dearly departed, and if there is any solace to be found, it is in the fact that through death they are no longer shackled by the chains of hate, of evil, or division they endured in life. And he says here, we must do better than this. So, he was even talking from a Christian standpoint, and I really enjoyed his post. And again, as I stated, I shared it on my page. You can go and read it in its entirety, because it is very relevant, and it allows you to see inside an individual's heart and mind, and how they are trying to, what's the word I'm looking for, comprehend, or trying to cope with what has been dealt. And this article definitely, allowed us to see what Joe was feeling here. It was perfectly written. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Did you want to comment on his post?
Yes, I do. Because I read it too, and it was really profound to me, and it was touching, and I could feel his heart when he, as he was writing or after he posted it. One of the things that tends to happen in a tragic situation like this is all of a sudden, we want to assign blame. Or it must have been a black person, or it must have been a this, or it must have been that. One of the things that we must stop doing, because we are better than this, we have to stop assigning blame to a culture, a race, an ethnic group, people who have mental illnesses, believers, non-believers, labels, all labels. And we're going to have to do better, as he said. We're going to have to really do better than that. And I think I also read where either he said it or someone else said it. I was reading about this tragedy. They said that the people who were down, whether they were white, black, female, male, transgender, gay, or whatever, all of their blood was the same color. all of the blood was red. There was no distincting factor in the blood that they shared. It was all red.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. We're all we're all human,
Right.
and we all have red blood running through our veins. And you know, that's interesting how, you know, we separate stuff like that. But you know, unfortunately, sometimes it may take, you know, some tragedies for us to realize the importance.
Yeah.
Let's see. Abby T says here, God said it rains on the just as well as the unjust. Evil does exist. We must be watchful, be mindful, say something, report it if you have knowledge of it. Shine the light on fear and evil. Let your light shine. Lady Rochelle says here, we have to continue to remember that God is in control. She says she prays with her girls whenever they leave the house, that God covers us. We still get out, but stay woke to our surroundings, resting in God to take care of us. That's an excellent point, and that will help those individuals who are fearful of going out as well.
Right.
Thank you for that, Lady Rochelle. Brandy also says here, she says, we have to stop making blanket statements like this doesn't happen to believers, or if you pray, this won't happen to you. She says, I understand the sentiment, but it's just not true. Then we have our young people thinking that they don't need to be watchful or vigilant because God's got them. No, we need to watch and pray. Saints do die in these tragedies. You know, thank you. And she actually added to my point of what I was talking about with my dad, you know, watch as well as pray. So, and I took my dad always saying that, not that prayer wasn't enough, but you have to add on to, you have to be practical. Sometimes you have to make the word of God practical, you know, and, you know, like even Lady Rochelle was saying, being conscious, being aware of your area and your surroundings and everything.
Right.
I believe that's what my dad was really trying to get across to me, you know, be conscious, be aware.
Yes.
And let's see here. Lady Rochelle says also another comment she has, we prayed one morning that God protect us and ended up having an accident. And her 11-year-old said, Mama, we prayed and God still allowed us to have an accident. And she said she had to show her that no one was hurt and they walked away unharmed. So God did exactly what they asked. We can't live to die, but we must die to live. Wow, that's deep.
That's profound.
That is deep.
Profound.
I like that.
Yeah.
Very good. And that's good because she's able to, you know, talk to her children and let them know, you know, some things may possibly happen. And I mean, we all, you know, go through things, have dealt with, you know, deaths, you know, in our families. And, you know, sometimes we may think, you know, oh, why did this happen? I prayed that they would not, you know, die or something like that. But God has a plan. And my scripture is, you know, all things work together. You know, we just never know, but just trusting in God.
So true.
Yeah.
So true. I think I shared with you, I may have shared with you when my granddaughter's mom passed away. Mom, who is my daughter, actually passed away last year in November. And then maybe about not quite 6 months after that, her father also passed away. And so when I told her, it was the hardest thing I think I've ever had to do, to tell her that her dad had passed away also. And her first words out of her mouth were, why is God doing this to me? And I took that, it was difficult to really address it. But I really had to tell her that, you know, that God is sovereign and that he knows what he's doing. And he's not picking her out of the crowd and doing things, you know, specifically to her. But that some kind of way she was going to get through that God was going to help her to get through it. I didn't have a lot of words. At that point, I was really kind of, you know, really not prepared really to comfort her in that regard, because we were still grieving for my daughter, of course. And I was really at a disadvantage, even as a therapist. But some way we got through it. And she came one day to me and she said, I trust God again. And to me, that was just that was just beautiful, because I didn't want her to lose faith in God. And we can't lose faith in God. No matter what happens in this world, we must realize, like you said, that God is ultimately in control, complete control, and He's sovereign.
Definitely.
And what happens, He's got us, and that's all we can say.
Right. That's for sure. That is for sure. Oh, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. There was an article that I was actually looking at that I wanted to refer to today, but what I want to do, I'm going to ask Demetria to put the link, check your inbox, and if you can put the link on this particular thread. And actually, the title of it is Coping with the Psychological Trauma of a Mass Shooting. That's the article that I was looking at and referencing for today's session. And it's pretty detailed here. But again, Demetria, if you can please put that link on the live feed for me so that my listeners can refer to it. And it says here, how to cope psychologically when the world no longer feels safe. So, we look at, of course, here in My Body, so we look at, all aspects. We look at it from a psychological, of course. We've also talked from a spiritual aspect on today as well, because, this is, they both work hand in hand, and people don't really realize that. We're not, when we talk psychologically, we're not dismissing spiritual and vice versa. They definitely work hand in hand. So it's just, the psychological aspect is just allowing us to, to see things, I guess, in a different sense. But if you guys can, thank you, Demetria, for putting that up. If you guys can refer to that article again, Coping with the Psychological Trauma of a Mass Shooting, because again, this is not something that's easy to deal with, and you can I think you can kind of relate some things that are here in this article, even to like other tragedies, not just the shooting. We talked about the hurricanes and the earthquakes and other things that we face, because it affects all of us. It really does.
Yes, it does.
It really does. Here, let's see on this article. And I didn't get a chance to send it to you, Dr. Joyce, so that you can look at it. But, you can always look at it in your own time.
I'm trying to pull it up now. To see if I can, I'm trying to find it.
The doctor here has different bullet points. We assume the world is safe and predictable. And that is actually just a normal, regular thought that we have, until we come across something like this.
Sure.
But then, like you were talking about how you first talked about how, you think about how you dealt with past tragedies, but then even in relation to what Lady Rochelle was mentioned about the accident that she and her daughters were involved in after they prayed, but then she had to look at the good that came out of it. So, a lot of times we have to look at, we still have to look at the good, because, God is in control. Yes, we know that. But then try and find some good, in it, whether it is like you mentioned earlier about, getting out of yourself and just going to help someone, seeing what we can do to help, make, life easier for someone else. I even hear in Vegas, I believe there were free Uber rides that were given out. And, things like that, or, stores were open where people can come in. Victims' families were coming into town, and they were opening up and giving, I think there were free rooms that were given out, so, these establishments were, kind of, thinking out of the box to try and help,
wonderful.
The individuals that were affected by this. And, you even think about, the people that were running around just trying to help others, that were, trying to get out and get away from this shooter. They weren't thinking about themselves. They were reaching out to others as well. So, those are good things that we can think about and kind of dwell on as well.
And those are the things that help and are part of that healing process. And that when we see the first responders, and we see other people who are so heroic and assisting. Sometimes they're injured themselves, but they're assisting others who have been injured. When we see that, to me, that gives me faith in the human race again. Because when I see that, it makes hope. You know, it revives the hope in mankind to me. Because there are some good things that have evolved from this tragedy. Like we mentioned, you mentioned some of the things, the assistance, and the people who are donating blood, and the people who are right there, on ground level, trying to assist with everything. We have some wonderful people in this world, and the few who resort to doing something like this, we still have, and like you said, I like what you said, God is a God of balance. And there is no way that this whole world is going to be consumed by evil. Not as long as, there's a God. There's always going to be some good until he does something differently. But
Beautiful.
we can't just allow this tragedy to color our whole perspective on the human race.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And it's something, well, I'm going to read this last portion of that article because it correlates to what you just said, because at the end of it kind of gives resolve or helps people to have a resolve to what we're dealing with. This is what you can do. How do you deal with the fact that the world, some people may think that the world isn't saved, or they may be traumatized. And you actually, some of the points that I'm getting ready to read, you actually already brought these out, Dr. Joyce.
Okay.
She says there's no perfect answer, but the strategies below may help us get back to our normal lives. Number one, she has acknowledge your feelings about the event. And you mentioned that when I asked you if someone come into your office, to allow them to take time to talk about it, to, get through the feelings of the anger, the fear, the sadness. And the second step she has here is practice radical acceptance.
Oh, okay.
And you mentioned that earlier as
My
well.
word.
Your
yes.
word, yes.
And I wasn't able to pull up the article.
Right. She didn't even see this article.
It.
Definitely. So you know she's real. And then, within this, it says it's okay to compartmentalize and deliberately focus your attention back on your own life and what is most important for you to do today. Okay, number 3 it has here, don't overestimate the personal danger. So it says here, try to get out of the fight or flight alarm response.
Oh my goodness.
And take a step back so you can logically.
That was written by a therapist, I know.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes. So you can logically evaluate the likelihood of personal danger. So as I'm saying, Dr. Joyce has already kind of talked about the things that I in this article already, and she didn't even see the article. Let's see. The next one is do something active to cope. Taking action to soothe your feelings, express your anger, or reach out to the victims can be very helpful.
All right.
Try to live a meaningful life despite societal trauma. Focus on the good that you can do in the world and the things that make your life meaningful. You can't stop all the bad things in the world, but you can live by your values, speak up against injustice. Abby T mentioned that earlier, and be a positive influence in your family and community. And then let's see, it says the best response to mass shootings and other traumas is to acknowledge and express the pain, share it with others, take steps to soothe and comfort yourself, and then take action to build a positive, healthy life and contribute to creating a better world despite the challenges. Awesome. I love it. And this article was by Dr. Melanie Greenberg. And that's
I'm writing her name down.
Okay, great.
Okay.
And the link to that particular article is on my Facebook Live feed.
Oh, okay.
So you can reference it if you like, or anyone can.
Okay.
So yeah, this is great. This is great. It all correlates. It all corresponds to what we were already discussing on today. Now, what I want to do, I know I have a spoken word that I want to have actually played on today. Is there anything that you wanted to wrap up with the session so far before I play this?
Oh, okay. Because yeah, I'm going to. What I really wanted to just briefly mention, there was a video clip that I heard. It was President Obama addressing gun control, and I know that we feel as though it's an enormous undertaking, and that we feel so overwhelmed, and we feel that there's nothing that we can do. But we can get involved to some degree. I know that one of my bishops put up a site, a petition where we were allowed to go in and add our name to that particular petition, and it's about gun control. And the reason that he's so passionate about it is because he lost his son to a carjacking. His son was fatally shot and killed during the carjacking. So he's very adamant, he's very passionate about gun control. But this is what our former, it brings me to tears to have to say former, but our former president said this. He said this about gun control. He said that there was a time when we had automobile accidents and the fatality rate was really high. But how we countered that is we imposed seatbelt laws. The automobile manufacturers installed airbags, and then we cracked down on drunken drivers. And then when we started having the terrorist attack on the airplane, we checked everyone's luggage. We had everyone go through metal detectors. And so when it comes to these violent acts and these criminal acts with the guns, and that man amassed, I don't know how many guns and rifles that he had in his room, but I just want to leave the audience and the people who are listening with this, some kind of way we are going to have to pray, and we are going to have to, some kind of way, maybe get involved locally, and we're going to have to go after the guns. I mean, it's just come down to that. We're going to have to go after the guns and attack this situation like we've done everything else. So that's what I wanted to end with.
Okay. And I know it's a lot of input, regarding the guns, the NRA,
Right.
and everything else. So I know a lot of people have a lot of, especially when it affects you personally. A lot of times you will kind of look at it in a different light. But I tell you, God is going to have to help us throughout this entire, process, this life that we're living in. Is definitely going to have to help us. So, but I do want to thank you so much for taking time out on today and joining us and giving your input and your counseling session that you've done on today. And I just appreciate you. I just thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me again. And I, of course, as always, I enjoy being on the show, even though talk about things that are not pleasant, but I think overall, those conversations are necessary as well. And
definitely,
I've helped somebody kind of try and, not comprehend, but try and adjust and process some of these things that are happening in our world. And I thank you for being such a gracious host as always.
Thank you so much. Your input is so valuable. Very much
Thank you.
so. And I know you've helped someone. You definitely have on today, and especially looking at the comments. So thank you again. And I want you to be blessed, and we will definitely have you back again. Okay?
For sure. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye. Again, that was Dr. Joyce Graham, and she's all the way in Ohio, and she has joined us by telephone on today to give us input. And I see here Demetria says here, dialogue has been so helpful and needed. And she's thanking you again if you're still listening, Dr. Joyce. But we all thank you for your input. And, I like to have individuals on who are in these areas, who are practicing counseling. She has her own practice, and I'm appreciative she has taken time out on today. I do want to thank all of you that are listening here on Facebook Live, you that are on the station's website, and then also on YouTube for joining us on today. Demetria Brand Triplet has also for me, and I thank her so much for putting up the sponsors of Mind, Body, and Soul. So those of you that are interested, and I know we have Anointed Minds Tutoring, that is a tutoring service, and Deanna Adams is the individual you need to contact. Please see the comment section. If you have a child that is in need of tutoring, we're back in the school season, and she's awesome at what she does. She's an educator and has been one for a number of years, and she can definitely help to get your child on the right track. Anointed Minds Tutoring Service. And then we also have Studio V Fashion, Image, and Consulting. And if you all are looking for someone to help to get your fashion together, the trends are out there. And she has her Facebook page. That is Felicia Williams that I'm speaking of. And she's in Columbus, Ohio. But you can definitely order from her if you're not in Columbus, and she will get the products to you. And then also we have virtual executive assistants, and that is headed by Demetria Brand Triplet. This girl is awesome in what she does, and if you need someone to help you as an assistant, you're on the go, you have meetings, or you have projects that you are in need of someone to help you to get it out, Demetria is the person that you are looking for. So I'm grateful for these sponsors of Mind, Body, and Soul. Again, you can go to the Facebook Live and also on my page to get their information, further information. And let's see, I see there are the comments here on Facebook Live, but what I'm going to ask my producer to do is to please play for me Elder Kevin McGee. And he has a show here on Saturdays at 12 o'clock. It is called Connections. He is an elder of the church, but he's also a wonderful writer. He has spoken word, and he is helpful to Mind, Body, and Soul. He wrote another spoken word that we will have played on today in relation to today's topic. So I want you to take a listen and go ahead.
Waking from my slumber, dreaming, scores of people everywhere, running but not knowing their destination. Chaos ripping through the air, bodies falling, blood spurting. Yes, a nightmare like I've never had in my life. But then I look over to the floor, a clear plastic bag with bloody clothes, and then through the haze of what I thought was a dream, I began to remember these are the only remains I was allowed to bring home because she won't be coming back anymore. That's what they told me at the hospital. She's gone. Unreal reality setting in. She was at work. We just hung up from each other, never realizing that the words of I love you would be our last to each other. My phone rings. The story is revealed. This disgruntled coworker comes in with a blank check to kill. Paralyzed when I heard she was almost out of the building when Satan's messenger sent a metal arrow hitting her in the back. I want to question this fool. I want to know why, but he dispatched his own life. So now torture sets in. What did any of these people ever do to warrant such a cowardly act of not wanting to deal with your own life? And so I stare at the clothes with confusion, anger, hatred, with my own murderous fury that you, Mr. Gunman, have robbed me of by killing yourself. Now I have to explain to our children why Mama won't be back. Have to raise our daughter without the example of a mother who would have walked her on that road to womanhood. Our son who would never know what it would be like to have that basketball mom. Tears streaming down my face till death do us part was not supposed to come this soon. Can't take it. Don't know what to do. And so I lay back down, praying that this nightmare will end.
Wow, that was powerful. Very powerful. Thank you, Elder McGee, for that spoken word, that poem that you have so eloquently written and shared with us here at Mind, Body, and Soul. I know there were a couple things that were going on the Facebook Live, but I really hope that you guys got a chance to listen to Elder McGee. That was very powerful, and it is in relation to today's topic. I do want to thank you all again for listening on today to Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette. We are going to end here, and I want you all to make sure you stay tuned. We have some great things coming up with Mind, Body, and Soul. So make sure you go to the Facebook page, Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette. We'll have some promos coming up soon for an actual segment that we're going to feature at the end of every month. So Dr. Shirley Hill is on standby, and she is going to come in and talk to us about health. I'm not exactly sure what the segment is going to be called yet, but we will get that to you. But I want you all to make sure you stay tuned for that. Very helpful to us, especially us as a people. We need to make sure we look after and take care of our bodies. We need healthy bodies in this day and time, and in the ministries that we are involved in. So again, thank you so much for joining me on today. Thank you, Earl. I appreciate you and Intellectual Radio. And until next time, I want you to get caught up with Annette.
You've just been listening to Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette, where your host, Annette Harris, provided you with psychological and biblical insight for your everyday concerns. Need more insight? Visit Annette's Facebook page at Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette. Don't forget, tune in next week for Mind, Body, and Soul with Annette.